So an interesting article came out on the CNN website that I wanted to highlight because it absolutely illustrates what the problem is with how we as humans view nature and why we're not making more progress towards saving the environment. So I'm going to go over what this article talks about, and then I've got 5 different ways that we can make changes as a society in order to help save the environment. So this article goes through and it highlights 3 points that were made in a publication from the UN affiliated group Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, or IPBES for short. And they basically highlighted 3 main issues going on with the environment. That there were 3/4 of the land, or 75% of the planet's surface, has been significantly altered, meaning biodiversity is declining faster than at any other time in history. 1 million species. So 1 million species have already faced extinction, many within decades, and unless action is taken, the biodiversity is going to be lost. And then 82% of mammal biomass. And they say that it's the total amount of creatures is crashing. So these are the 3 main points that this group put out as significant issues. So the CNN article goes on to talk about, okay, well, the scientists have known for a long time that these certain things are problems. Why are we not making headway? Is it like screaming into the wind? Is there just so much going wrong that nothing's being done? What are the issues? And what I believe one of the biggest issues starts with the title of this article. Is nature over? Well, nature includes humans. So if nature is over, we're all screwed. Researchers like to discuss this human-nature relationship as if humans are somehow above nature. We are part of nature. And that simple perspective issue is the number one cause of why we are having environmental issues. If we understood that nature is really a much broader category than humans and that we do not rule over nature, then we would behave differently towards nature. So this is part of the problem. It starts with the title of the article. And the reason the title of the article is this way is because, yes, even scientists, researchers, when I have been doing research, I was a former professor and did research on the human-nature relationship. When you go to reference previous articles and what's been published, the science that you will find is on the human-nature relationship. So even within the scientific community, there are issues with the perspective of our place as humans within the world. The article discusses how scientists have known 20 plus years that things are going sideways with the environment. Things are not going the right direction. Everything's going, we're losing animals, we're losing untouched space, etc. More and more water is being polluted, all these different things. It's not a mystery to scientists. They've known this forever. And they've been publishing about it 20 plus years. So why has nothing changed? Well, I believe that there's 5 core reasons why things have not changed. Number 1, a vast majority of the researchers and scientists are professors and researchers at universities whose grants are funded largely by some foundations, but largely by the US government. They are doing research so that they can create publications to then get tenure, so that they can keep their job after 7 years. Their whole goal is to create research that then can be published on. Once a professor reaches tenure, their motivations, can change a little bit, and the dramatic push for publication is there as much as when you're an assistant professor. So where do they publish all this research that they are doing for these 6-7 years for tenure? They're publishing it in peer-reviewed journals. Well, how many non-scientific people do you know that actually read peer-reviewed journals? Not many, if any. The general public does not get the information that the scientists and researchers are generating. So they're generating all this knowledge that's going nowhere. The vast majority of research is not applicable directly. It's studying something minute that then 3 steps, 4 steps, 5 steps down the road might lead to something applicable. But the vast majority of research is not directly applicable. They're not testing, does this machine, filter out pollutants from water or not? The vast majority of research is not that. So that's one of the issues. There also could be more longitudinal research done if the government would pay for it. There's not a lot of money given for longitudinal research. And if you're not familiar with what that means, it means research done over a period of time, over many years, so that you can track the effects of something. So number 2, any large city probably has 2 or 3, if not more, nonprofits directly related to homelessness or directly related to different aspects of the environment. And with nonprofits, a lot of times it's people that are doing this in their free time. They usually lack funding, and there's only so much they can do. They're without funding, they don't have a large staff, if they have any at all, and they rely heavily on volunteers. One of the things that I see towards a solution is having more for-profit companies related to preserving the environment. And the reason why a for-profit is different is because their motivations, they've got to make it. If they don't make it and they don't solve the environmental water issue of this city and pollution issue of this city, then they're out of a job. They're out of payment, and they can fold. So by having for-profit companies work on environmental issues, you increase the potential for that company to be 120% invested in solving that problem, so that then they can take their solution that they've proved in this city A and take it to city B and say, in city A, we solved this particular stormwater problem for them, and they can take it to city B. Number 3, we need to have scientists, nonprofits, for-profits, everybody and anybody who has true environmental knowledge to be able to break things down for the average person about how they can applicably change things in their life to make a difference. When I was doing research in New Zealand about people's connection with the environment and spirituality, and what were they doing for advocacy for the environment, one of the things that became very clear through some of the questions was that people were wholeheartedly invested in trying to do something for the environment. But the one thing that was stopping action was the fact that they didn't know what to do. People, people today, they're now they understand plastic bags, not so good. Plastic straws, not so good. Plastic in general, not so good. And so people are making changes. Now you'll see people at the grocery store bringing their own reusable bags. You never saw this, 15 years ago. And it's through this public education about the damages of plastic. And one of the reasons why we truly are starting to understand the major dangers of plastic is because of social media. I know a lot of people aren't fans of social media, but the fact is that when that picture of the turtle with the straws in its nose went viral, municipalities started changing the regulations to ban plastic straws because people were horrified, and they should be. It's through public education, which brings us to item number 4, which is to have companies hire, not in-house, but hire external environmental experts to review what their sustainability, how their manufacturing is going, what can they actually do to improve their process. Well, why it's key to have external people is because the external people will be able to tell you like it is. If you have an internal person, they may be told that, yes, we really want to know how the company's doing. But if they actually go out and say, hey, our company is really toxic, we need to change X, Y, and Z, they're actually potentially putting their own job in danger. And if you are an owner of a company that legitimately cares about making changes, and I say that because companies hire environmental specialists like me all the time to create, these happy little reports that say that they're sustainable and they're doing all these great things for the environment, when the reality is that they're not. They may be doing, 10% good, but 90% bad towards the environment. And obviously they're going to highlight the 10% that they're doing well. But, I don't do a whole lot of consulting for companies. And the reason is because I will not be hired by a company that just wants to have a happy little report written so that they can then use it for their marketing. If a company wants real, legit feedback, I'm the person to hire, and people like me who are going to give real and true feedback. Now, part of this, along this same line, is policymakers. So who makes the policies for whether we allow straws in cities or not? Well, it's normal people who run for office. And now they've got power and they make policies. But does a politician know significantly more than the average person about the environment? Enough to write public policy on it? No, absolutely not. Unless they, have degrees in the environment, etc., have worked in the environmental field, then okay, that's an outlier. But the vast majority of politicians have no more clue about the environment than the average person on the street, because they are the average person on the street. So one thing that policies makers need to do is they need to bring in consultants for creating public policy around environmental issues. Can you imagine if the state decided when they were making their regulations about how doctors practice if it was just a bunch of people who had no medical expertise. You know, if the licensing board for doctors was just everybody who had no medical knowledge. I mean, that's horrifying to think of it. I want zero to do with creating what the appropriate legal procedures are within an operating room. And the reason is because I have zero medical knowledge. I don't have any medical training. But yet, we have policymakers all the time making decisions about the environment which we live in, which we are a part of. And frankly, they're getting it wrong. They try their best, but they're getting it wrong. And so we must bring in outside consultation in order to be able to educate and provide proper legislation. Number 5, we have to have a perspective that makes us part of nature. We do not rule over nature. And we have to have that sort of perspective in order to change things. We have to have solutions that work for the way that people live. So, when people talk about giving up cars, unless you live in a big metropolis like New York City or someplace like that where there is a robust transit system, giving up your cars is not going to happen. Reality. We have to have reality in mind. So what do we do about transportation? Well, electric cars. We can do biomass. We can do all these other different things. We can take, and everyone talks about they don't want to see solar panels all over the place. Well, the government has been testing for, I believe, 10, 15 years about having solar highways. And the results have come out really, really incredibly well. So we're going to have roads anyway. Why not make it a solar highway that's collecting the sun? And by the way, this whole solar highway, it also burns off the snow. So there's no need to be salting everywhere. So it's safer. It's made out of recycled plastic. You run all your telecommunications in it. So those places in the middle of the desert where you can't get a cell signal to save your life, and it would be collecting energy that could be supplying power without the need for us to continue to mine coal. To wrap up number 5, what it is it's having the right perspective that we are a part of nature and creating solutions that work with our lives. Not getting crazy on the fringes of things, but having and using and creating solutions that work with our lives. So I've got a link below to the original article on CNN. Check it out. And make sure you leave your comments below. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.